Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Tahir Dhindsa and you're watching SDTV. Renewables are taking place, and energy, global warming, and the climate change. It's really a mess. So there is a deep research going on how we can control all that before the humanity goes off from the tipping point. It's a precipice. One of the thing is the locking the carbon, and for that carbon markets are getting shape, and the architecture and the way to move and to rumble on, and the pricing and so many other factors. Obviously that needs a research. So today we have brought a very eminent scholar who's sitting in Doha at in the Gulf Organization for Research and Development, Alexandra Soezer, and we'll talk to her about all these concepts. But before we start on, Alexandra, very warm welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here with you today.
I would request you, please give your small introduction for the people who will be listening to your conversation for the benefit of so they can listen more keenly after that.
Great. Yes, no, with absolute pleasure. So I'm a director at the Climate Action Center of Excellence, which was launched by the Gulf Organization for Research and Development at COP28 in Dubai. And I joined CASE in March last year, bringing over 15 years of experience from the United Nations Development Program, where I led MDG Carbon, UNDP's corporate framework for carbon finance under the Kyoto mechanisms, and then the Carbon Payment for Development, UNDP's dedicated program for Article 6 readiness. But here at CASE, at the Climate Action Center of Excellence, we are committed to advancing the global carbon markets under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And we will do this, we are doing this through three key pillars. We assist countries, host countries of climate actions in crafting regulatory frameworks to expand the number of countries that is ready to participate in Article 6 mechanisms. We also guide project developers in integrating carbon finance into their mitigation projects, and thereby we enhance the project's financial viability and sustainability. Then we facilitate matchmaking between carbon credit buyers and sellers through our partnership with MSearch. It's a leading edge auction platform based in the UK. And most recently, we have been working with Rasmal Ventures, the first independent venture capital fund established in Qatar to set up a catalytic tech fund to scale carbon markets.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll rumble on with the first question. Carbon markets for climate action. That's quite a slogan. What is that? What are the pathways? What is ahead? How we do it? How we make it happen?
Yeah, so carbon markets currently still fragmented, and we talk about this a lot, but I hope that the carbon market space under the Paris Agreement mechanism will become more structured and mainstream over the next few years. The market will move from a patchwork of voluntary initiatives to a more integrated global framework under the Paris Agreement mechanisms, especially through, of course, Article 6.2 cooperative approaches and Article 6.4, the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. And these two mechanisms are creating the rules, the infrastructure that ensure carbon markets are not just trading credits, but really about delivering measurable, additional, and verifiable emission reductions with the overall objective to achieve long-term low-carbon transformation.
Right.
And one major trend I see is the rise of sectoral approaches. So instead of focusing narrowly on individual projects, we are seeing entire industries, entire sectors, countries, like for the forestry sector or energy sector in Indonesia, the waste sector in Ghana, building carbon crediting systems at really a national sector-wide scale. And I think the shift is really critical for integrity because it ties carbon finance directly to national climate targets. And it creates impact beyond just emission reductions. It really helps to transform whole economies and achieve a low carbon society. I mean, this should be the overall objective. And another trend is growing demand for correspondingly adjusted high integrity credits. So buyers, especially corporations under pressure from investors or regulators, are no longer willing to accept the cheapest but potentially lower quality offsets. So the Paris Agreement crediting mechanisms, Article 6.2 and Article 6.4, have set really a new global standard, and compliance markets, even like CORSIA, the aviation market, are already aligning themselves with these mechanisms.
Yeah.
And they are all pushing for higher quality supply of Paris-aligned carbon credits.
Right. Would you make us walk through the operationalization of the Paris Agreement, some of it, and also if a major player like the United States walks out of it, then? So kindly walk us through the trends on the operationalization of the Paris Agreement, Article 6, some of the things.
So I would say over the past few years, the carbon market landscape has really undergone transformative change through operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. It is the first global framework that ties carbon markets to national climate targets, to the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. And here, one of the most important developments, of course, is the rise, as already mentioned, of Article 6.2 cooperative approaches. This allows countries to bilaterally or multilaterally trade emission reductions. And these emission reductions are called internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, or ITMOs. And they all require correspondingly adjusted credits. So meaning when a country sells an emission reduction, it must adjust its own climate ledger, ensuring that there is no double counting. And this is really a game changer for credibility and transparency of carbon markets. And then under Article 6.4 mechanisms, which is the centralized UN supervised crediting mechanism, which builds on lessons learned from the clean development mechanism under the Kyoto mechanisms, but it adds stricter environmental integrity rules, especially corresponding adjustments, but also a structured grievance process, contributions to overall mitigation in global emissions, mandatory adaptation finance contributions. So it aligns really much stronger with the global net zero pathways. And in parallel to these Paris-aligned UN processes, there are also initiatives like the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, ICVCM, and the Voluntary Carbon Market Integrity Initiative, VCMI. And they are also raising the bar for what counts as a credible carbon credit, which is important for corporations who have to make or who want to make carbon claims responsibly. I mean, CORSIA will most, at least based on feedback from ICAO, we don't expect a major impact on the exit of the US for CORSIA. So CORSIA will remain operational, but of course there is maybe some less or globally less incentives for countries to raise the bar and engage in more ambitious markets. This can be a result, but we have not seen it yet. So on the contrary, countries, especially countries in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, they are even they of course they see carbon markets also as a development tool and as a climate finance instrument. So for them, carbon markets will remain very relevant.
What implication does it have for the private sector, especially for Pakistan, because we are listening to the CBAM and other things as well. So, what implications it has, operationalization of Article 6 and all that, for the private sector of Pakistan?
Yeah, so for Pakistan, the operationalization of Article 6 um, can present a major opportunity. So both for the national economy and for the private sector, when Pakistan creates the necessary enabling environment, and Pakistan has already a regulatory and institutional Article 6 framework. And based on this framework, now for the first time, Pakistan businesses can generate and trade high integrity carbon credits internationally, creating new revenue streams for their interventions, for their mitigation actions, while contributing to the country's climate goals through a structured revenue sharing mechanism. So this is especially relevant for sectors like waste management, energy, agriculture. These sectors could all see significant benefits. And for example, projects in renewable energy, methane capture, climate smart agriculture, they could be authorized by the government under Article 6 regulations, the existing Article 6 regulations, and sold as internationally transferred mitigation outcomes for a significantly higher price than in the voluntary market. And of course, the same applies to Article 6.4 emission reductions. And they can be sold to countries, to governments, airlines, or businesses needing offsets for their net zero targets. So carbon markets not only bring foreign investment, but also strengthen innovation and competitiveness in Pakistan's industries, especially as global supply chains start demanding lower carbon footprints. And this is directly linked to CBAM. But there are some key success factors. So in order to become a leader in Article 6, businesses in Pakistan will have to act or will have to build credibility. That means understanding the rules of Article 6, especially around corresponding adjustments and environmental integrity, developing high quality projects that align with Pakistan's national climate priorities, partnering with international accredited validators and verifiers early to validate and verify their projects, and also working closely with government for authorization of the credits under Article 6. And if this is all fully embraced by the private sector, Pakistan can really position itself as a regional leader in carbon economy.
These carbon markets and everything, all this moves towards net zero. China has declared that they are going to get, it would be net zero, or and all that. And it seems to be utopia sometime. And when you see in countries like Pakistan, it seems very, very difficult. How do you integrate, carbon markets with the national policies on ground? Because you know the problems, you see the challenges, other of the production and the cost of production and all that factors. How you see that this carbon market would be integrated with the national policies, especially with Pakistan?
So Article 6, by its nature, how it is structured, is already fully aligned with national climate policies and pathways because it is directly linked to a country's NDC. So carbon markets under the Paris Agreement don't exist in parallel. They are really directly tied to countries' nationally determined contributions. And this means that credits generated, traded, or retired must also contribute to real additional emission reductions and not simply shift emissions from one place to another. And the key feature here is the corresponding adjustment, which ensures that when an emission reduction is sold internationally, it is removed from the host country's inventory. This protects environmental integrity for both the selling and the buying countries, and the old problem of double counting that undermined earlier markets. And it also requires a transparent revenue sharing mechanism. to avoid overselling of credits. But all these details are usually defined in so-called Article 6 regulatory and institutional frameworks that countries will have to set up before engaging strategically in Article 6 markets. And these Article 6 regulatory frameworks define how to structure projects and design the revenue sharing mechanism to avoid disadvantages for the host country. But overall, with this alignment, carbon markets can really mobilize private sector finance for mitigation projects and avoid early movers, because projects that would otherwise not happen, especially new technologies, can be supported through carbon finance, which are exposed grants, and create really a credible pathway to a low carbon society.
Thank you very much for.
Sorry, just to add, there are already countries that are leading, for example, Singapore, Switzerland on the buyer side, but Ghana, Chile, Cambodia in the region, and even Vanuatu in the Pacific are all have already structured frameworks and are actively engaging in carbon in Article 6 markets.
Thank you very much. You see, climate change is a fait accompli, but to grapple the institutional mechanism and to do a good footwork to save yourself from the impending disaster that may come is purely a choice. And obviously, research and development, which is taking place to guide the countries and nations and other players towards a common shared goal of saving yourself, saving the country, saving the problem, is rumbling on. Carbon markets are nowadays being professed as one of the key areas through which the countries can come along and save themselves and improve the climate and bring resilience and also gain in other ways financially and otherwise as well. So I think it must be taken seriously, good research and adaptation, and the people like the expert you have just listened are there to guide you on the way, on the pathways towards the future. With this, we come to the end of the program. Bye for now.